you must be really excited. Just a new trailer, a full trailer just today, this morning. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, very excited. I must say that, yeah, that trailer feels like the first one that really gives you a taste of how many worlds there are and how stories overlap, and that this really is, you know, an epic tale of the big questions of life or death and family. And yeah, it's thrilling. It's thrilling to see it pieced out. I think some of the press have seen more than I have. So, you know, I can't, I've only seen as much as you have. So that was, yeah, it was very exciting. And hear the tatter through all the cast's WhatsApp group. Suddenly you can feel the traction building.
Oh, I was actually going to ask if you had a chance, I don't even know if that's a spoiler, to know them, to work with them, to get to know your Hulk. You're having about it's about 20, right? 20 are coming out for Comic-Con, and your co-showrunners. Other than the group text, have you had a chance to meet all of them?
Oh yeah, very much so, because we were in the situation we were in New Zealand in lockdown, couldn't leave the country. Me and my family, I went with my family, even though we thought we'd only be there 6 months, because my son was only 1.5 years at the time. And so then we were locked down for 1.5 years there. And so the whole cast helped raise my son. They helped, you know, ate at my house. We were everybody's family. There was cast who weren't able to bring their children, who were separated from them for a long, long time. There's, you know, younger actors who were separated from their families for a long, long time. So everybody had to be everything to everybody. So yeah, they're definitely some of the closest friends I've ever made on a project, by a mile.
That's amazing. How long? I'm looking at the announcement from your agency that you're even involved in this project, which probably even came later after you were cast. How long a process has this been?
I think I first found out about this in November, beginning of November, maybe. Sent for some prep in December to New Zealand, and then we moved out as a family in January. And yeah, so it's been almost 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. I used to live in London, England. I'm currently living in Australia. I have no idea where I'm going to be living next. Now that they've moved the production back to London, will we move back as a family? I don't know. I now have my New Zealand permanent working visa, should I want to stay there. That country had such a big impact on me. So it's been, yeah, it's been everything. You know, it's entirely defined my life for years now.
How's it like coming into it? You know, were you I think I'd read you talked about wanting to be in Dune, Denis Villeneuve's Dune. Is this like a substitute for that? How much did you know this world before coming into it?
Well, I was introduced to it by my 2 older brothers, one of them who's a screenwriter here in Canada, Bruce M. Smith. He had read it, I think, 3 times in single sittings by the age of 13, skipped school to do so, I believe. So though they were imparted to me from my 2 older brothers as, you know, the first and only important thing you have to read in your life. I didn't actually read them because I was a hockey player. I was the black sheep of a completely artistic family. So my first introduction was the original films, and they completely knocked me for 6. Yeah, they threw my whole life into a loop because I was just, I think I was still in theater school in London, England when they first came out. And it was sort of like, yes, this is what I want to do with my life. You know, this is why I'm doing all of this. And then I started sort of studying a bit about Tolkien when I got this job, and was, I didn't know the academic background to The Lord of the Rings. I didn't know about the Oxford professor. I didn't know that this was an attempt to write real myth for the English people. I didn't know that it was approached with the academic rigor in a way, and that academic perspective that any great thesis paper would have, which only made me more curious and feel like it was ever more timely to be telling this second age story, with the world being in the state it's in, and that these big tales that make us question the choices and what's it all for, and what part are we playing in the forming of a good versus evil world is important. So yeah, it's been a long time now with the material, and I just fall more in love with the man and this whole world and lore.
How does it feel world building this world in probably the most anticipated show of the year?
Yeah, it felt thrilling in this sense that there was, especially our world, nothing is written about this world. Creating a prehistoric hobbit, so to speak, is wonderful, from the movement classes in pre-production, where we're deciding on how they move, and how they move is based on how they live, and how they live is not how any hobbit lived, because the hobbits had the Shire and we are refugees in a migratory pattern for our own survival. That we are a very delicate version of the hobbits in terms of we're so susceptible to danger that we have to stay incredibly sort of febrile and very sensitive to our senses, and we have to be able to disappear at the snap of a finger, literally from sight. All those, you start building it from how does these people walk? How do they sit? How do they move? What's the tempo of how they move? To then getting into prosthetics and what is the ears fill out? What's the justification for the oversized ears? What do these feet do? How do we get these feet to feel right? How do you walk? How do the feet make you walk? Because they're particularly large feet. Then get into who are we? We're a migratory people. We have carts. Our whole lives fill into our carts. We pull these carts. What's that like to be up and off and settling, and to be always, slightly watching over your shoulder, even if you feel safe. We probably the only world that exclusively worked on location in nature constantly, and everything, no expense spared, that the carts have a kind of camouflage, and that camouflage is designed exactly to the leaf coloration of every location we're in, so that if you were standing on a hill, you literally couldn't see us. Not just as, all the tricks were done in camera for the most part, as much as they could, and certainly our world a lot. When we pull parts of our costumes up to cover ourselves, we can literally disappear into the bush beside us. So that kind of stuff, it was, so much support from the production to find your world, to build this world. Extraordinary designers, costume designers, production designers who did so much of the work for us. Throw on the dress, throw on your top, wig goes in, hair pieces, the levels of dirt, little details of, if you had a little sort of totem on your belt or on your person, what would be your totem? What matters to you? tell me about your family history that you've written, your backstory. And then next thing you know, this bone and this leaf and that flower have all been custom into a thing. And all those, all those incredible details, making it go from designing a world, to designing a people's, to designing our family, to designing an individual. It was a pretty amazing process of dropping in.
How much of a role do you play in that? In maybe choosing your own totem or choosing what represents you? I saw photos of you in character and it's extensive. I mean, those prosthetics, the makeup, the hair, it looks like such an immersive process. How much do you feel like yourself when you're playing the character, and how much do you get to sort of choose what the character represents?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of me in it. And you knew that was going to be, because the auditions were so secretive. We'd heard, there was the rumor that, I think what I'm auditioning for is the untitled Lord of the Rings project. But nothing was known. So I had no idea what kind of peoples I was. And the scene was a very human scene. A character who's afraid of his own mortality and having to maintain brave face for his wife. The scene may have nothing to do with what will actually appear in the show, but they're just looking at the humanity you bring. And being a new father and getting to play a father, getting to play a husband and a family man, very different from roles I normally play, which are villains and nasty creatures. I think there was a lot of me in the character, for sure. A lot of the happiest parts of me definitely were in the character. But then there are the ways that character habituates itself. Has to be very much through a creature that, can feel the ruminate vibrations through the ground, knows that if a squirrel is moving a certain way, there's something coming from a field in that direction, and exists. But also, I think it's also sometimes understanding that what your character needs are aspects that you have to sort within yourself, like big, uncompromised, loving heart, just nothing but a devoted father and family man in a world that, in a very rural life that keeps some things very simple and clear, keeps the moral compass very clear. That kind of stuff was probably the easiest way of getting into character.
When do you remember the title actually changing from Untitled Lord of the Rings project to Lord of the Rings of Power? I remember hearing it myself, and there was so much sort of embedded within that. Even the decision to go with rings instead of ring, I think, is significant. So, what was the moment where you knew that was going to be the title of your show?
Well, I think I probably knew with the rest of the world. To be honest, we get the same release as you guys do. I mean, we get told that there will be a release, and that the name, but it came, and there was much debate on set of what it would be. But I loved the title. I thought the title, speaks very much to what this season is about, and one of the most important aspects of, the forging of the rings, and what is the whole history around that. It does something, doesn't it? Like when the title finally lands, I think everybody's first reaction is a little bit like, we're committed. Is this? But I think it just sat with me better and better the more I heard it come. And then to see some of the imagery, which, we got to see so little of. Even the stuff we did ADR on was, untreated and missing a lot of some of the finer, more beautiful details. The only thing is we knew, I have to say, we knew we were onto something special because so much of it was built, actually, not green screened, was in camera. And so we got to, I mean, it was like being in an amusement park. It was extraordinary.
I've actually had a chance to talk with a few of your castmates, not for this project in particular, but Morfeth for her movie Saint Maud, which was so interesting.
Amazing.
We chatted before she was announced for this one, and seeing that casting decision just from outside of the project myself, I think this is a really fascinating person and will make for an amazing maybe lead of the show. And there are other actors too that I could point to throughout that I've had a chance to either speak with or see. I can't wait to see how that comes together. What do you think about your castmate? You've talked about them as as a close-knit family of friends, but what about as individuals, as individual performers?
Yeah, I think my thing about the cast happened in our very first table read. I'd gotten to meet some of them, but I was also busy settling my family, so I wasn't sort of in the hotel with them. And sat down at the first table read, and by the end of reading the first 2 episodes, I was staggered. My wife's a theater director and playwright, and I came home right away and just said, I can't believe it, but they have absolutely nailed the casting. And not just that, the specificity of choice for each character was just immaculate, amazing. And as individuals, they are just the best. I mean, you could be in a nightmare if you hated your cast, stuck in New Zealand for 2 years with these people as your only family. But they're some of the most humble, mature, sensitive, caring, grounded, extraordinary people I've met in a long time. I was deeply humbled by their talent, was the first thing. And then as I got to know them, and I was completely struck by, boy, oh boy, they lucked out on the casting. And they did it right. I think they were very conscious of getting people that have a reputation, even if they don't have a huge track record. They have, even if, albeit a small reputation, for both obviously their talent, but also being good company members. And this is an ensemble piece. And so, it takes the whole village. And everybody was just so graceful. And you hear it. The place you hear it is from the crew. You hear from the makeup people. You can tell by the mood of your hair and makeup when you go in and, you didn't work the last week, but they were working the last week, and you go in and they're still bouncing. It's because they're working with cast who excite them and who respect them and who give them, they feel like artists involved. And so, yeah, I can't say enough about the cast. Really special performers, special people.
I definitely will dive into your show when I get a chance to see your show, to be able to ask specific questions, hopefully, if we hook this up again. But I have seen your work, of course, in First Cow. I've seen your work in I Am the Night. Those are 2 projects that I very much enjoyed, connected with, and also, I think, interesting to note, female-led projects, and ones in which, we saw something maybe a little bit differently that we haven't seen. What was your experience like working on those projects and working on them coming into this one?
Yeah, they were both, they were both incredible, very different. First Cow, she's just one of the great American auteurs, and I would have done anything to work with Kelly. It's my idea of heaven, working on a show that there are no cast trailers. There's not even a cast chair. If you need a seat, you find a cooler and you're sat down by a crew member who's taking a break. And it just feels like everybody's only there to make this thing. It was a lovely setup because we were shooting in the forests of Oregon, and the idea of just rolling around on the ground and sitting in the wilds, there's deep comparison with this show. I Am the Night, working with Patty, was just a thrill because she's a real hero of mine. I loved the material and the story. I thought that was an extraordinary story to think that that was true. Shedding light on some of the misogyny around the surrealist movement was very exciting. I'd seen an exhibit actually in London that was a kind of feminist subversion of the surrealist movement. So I'd known a bit about that, but the whole Black Dahlia Association, just the political sphere that was going on, speaking to corruption in power in the arts, and the misogyny there, I think was incredibly timely with what was going on with the Me Too movement at the time. And I think they set me up for this in terms of, one was a huge, high prestige show, shooting on film in LA, you know, doing that LA noir period. And the other one was all about the nuance of the moment in very unproduced environment, with such a keen eye looking through. And so I think coming to this show, you know, you tap into the experience of managing yourself on one of the biggest sets, you know, I've worked on, with, you know, I've worked on some big films, but nothing quite to compare to this. And yet, you know, that why the show hired you is for the detail and delicacy that you bring, despite 3 techno cranes swimming around and all landing on you, 5,000 crew, all on their monitors watching. You know, what you have to do is somehow put that all away and bring the most, you know, bring the kind of work that you are being asked to do on First Cow. Bring that delicacy and nuance to the show. And I think, yeah, I think with the cast that you have in the show, you're going to get people that thrilled to the size of it, but also can give you the detail and truth of it in a really unprecedented way.
You know, it's different for me not having had a chance to really dive into the show to sort of talk around it, but you've been an amazing guide for what to expect.
Yeah, well, I'll happily speak to you anytime you want, once you've seen it, once it's over. Yeah, it'd be my absolute pleasure.